Good afternoon or good morning. Welcome to MSO's third webinar of 2025, Picking the Right Farm Policies and Underwriting, presented by our own Rich Pelkofsky. I am Sue Quimby, Senior Vice President and National School Director for MSO Inc. Providing technical assistance today are Cassidy Cody and Mary Beagle. Take a minute to note the antitrust statement. We will not discuss or answer questions that might address any trade secrets. Next is the disclaimer. If you want a copy of these because you can't sleep at night, we can certainly provide them to you. We would like to thank our generous sponsors listed on the screen and on our website. They help to provide these quality educational webinars, the Ed Seminar, and the golf outing. Annual and event sponsorship opportunities are also available. Please contact us for information. Now about the webinar. Farm operations have changed radically in recent years. Don't I know it? I live on a farm. This seminar will review the exposures, including the growing agritourism sector, and will discuss ways to provide coverage on personal and commercial lines policies. Our presenter is Rich Pelkofsky, CPCU, CIC, CRM, CCP, AFIS. He's an Assistant Vice President and National Product Development and Senior Product Development Analyst. Tell us more, Rich.
Picking the right farm policies. As Sue had mentioned, things have changed a lot in the last 5, 10, 20 years. A lot of change, technology changes, and also coverage changes in different companies. We're going to review some key facts. What's driving the change? Well, I did a little research. USDA, beginning producers, this is in the last 10 years, less than 10 years of experience. 17% increase in new farmers, which we need because the farming population is growing older and older as people age out. Two key interesting points. 53% worked off the farm for 200 plus days. That's a lot of farmers that this isn't their primary job. Worked off the farm 1 to 199 days. So this is in Sue's case, this is Sue. She, it's not her primary job. It just allows her to continue a family farm. Again, only 28% listed farming as their primary occupation. So this is all very, very important. 41% are beginning producers are female. Now that's consistent with the percentage of women that are farming full time. So we're keeping that up. That's great. 26% of the farmers are under 35, even better. That's compared to 8% overall. So if we keep that up, we're going to move that 8% up, which we need to do to keep food coming to us and keeping our families happy. How does this impact you? Well, we got underwriting decision in the process. We have to evaluate the farm risk. We have to decide, is it a full-time farm, a ranch, non-operated farms? Maybe it's a side hustle. Maybe it has to, they're doing something on the side, working full time. Obviously, the facts say that, so we have to watch it. I'd love to see a show of hands of how many people have seen eggs for sale and signs on the roadsides since the egg crisis in the United States. I know they're popping up around by me. I mean, there was a couple of signs before, but I would have to say it's probably 10 times that now. So it's really important to be up and aware. That's happened at a house. These are homeowners. These are people in developments that have chickens. Non-operative farms. People retire. Now you have the farms not operating. Maybe they rent it. Maybe they don't. Maybe they. Does it increase the hazard? I mean, do you have a grassy field? Anybody here that there's wildfires in the United States? I mean, this is all important to us. We're going to talk about the coverage and the exposures. We're going to talk about the narrative, and we're going to come covering the other stuff to ask questions. So here's 3 questions for you. What makes a successful farm? What is the problem with non-operating farms? Who should assume the risk? We're going to try to answer some of those along the way here. So this, you may have seen this slide before if you've been to one of my presentations. I use it quite often. I did have an agency for 25 years. So it's like the telephone game. You got a narrative. Customer makes a pitch to the agent. The agent interprets it, evaluates it, decides, yeah, I might be interested in this. And then they talk to the underwriter. They present it. And now the underwriter's got to make sure that all the facts are true, verify the facts. What's the corroboration for the information? Uncovering the other stuff. That's what an underwriter does. That's why they ask questions back and forth to try to develop a true picture of what's there. Now, there's a lot of electronic tools we can use. That's also part of it. And then we issue a policy. And hopefully it's profitable. You know, we can never know. I know some of the most beautiful farms that have had fires that you would think would never have happened. So briefly mentioned wildfire, but we also have windstorm factors, hail moving in different territory than it used to. It's moving out of Texas and more into the middle America and into Ohio, Kentucky. So, you know, it's important. Got to know where it is. Now, economic factors. So, you know, the tariffs, that's going to increase costs for oil and fertilizer, machinery costs, used equipment's going up, machinery costs are going up for new purchases. Yet maybe we don't have a marketplace for where we're going to sell our crops. So we have to hold it. So we have to build buildings. We have to build structures that will house that product for the future. But some things you can't just do overnight. Like if you're trying to put in a CA storage for a commercial Apple operation, it's very difficult to get that done in a year. So you can house your product longer. And then lastly, what's the impact of inflation? Some of the key verification resources. Risk surveys. I use them a lot, or I used to use them a lot. They make me an expert. That's important. Internet, you know, it's not always true. You need to look at many different resources, confirm it. Individual websites. How many people know a farm that put more on their website than they were actually doing? I know I did, saw it many, many times. So that's one key place to go for the agent to investigate the website and make sure that they're doing what they say they're going to do, or ask them to take that off the website. Charity events. Everybody wants to be a good community sponsor and allow for, you know, things to happen, whether it's an auction or evening out. You can find these things on what's happening this weekend in the newspaper or on the internet for your locality. Chamber of Commerce is another good resource for that. Google Earth gives you a nice picture of what the facilities look like. And if you're lucky enough to get them in the fall after the leaves are down and before winter sets in with snow, you can really see a lot of detail. Newspapers, I know that's old school and maybe a lot of people, but a lot of the local newspapers have even more. Photos. And when I started my agency, that was where it all started. You had to have photos of every operation, of every building, two angles, catching all 4 sides. You had to do the inspection and a map personally, or they sent an inspector. So that depends upon the company and what they require. So we're going to look at some potential farm type exposures, pets. Now, remember, we're taking you from homeowners all the way to commercial property and liability policy. So we're going to need to talk about pets. Anybody have friends, neighbors, insureds with horses or chickens, rabbits, emu? When does it cross the line between a pet and a farm animal? Something that needs additional insurance protection. Livestock also includes horses and chickens. Maybe I didn't mention it before in pets, but maybe there's a 4-H animal, cattle or a pig, or even rabbits. So that's all part of the game. Other types. So small greenhouse, retail farm stand, large garden plot may all be part of it. Farm income. There may be limitations on farm income. You have to know what they are. Do they go to the farm market on Saturdays? Again, being a good community partner, they got extra stuff in their garden, and it only costs $10 to get a table at the farm market. And I could use the extra income. Have to be able to talk about that. Farm equipment. What kind of farm equipment do you have? What's it used for? This can lead you into an easy decision between homeowners and whether to go with a farm owners or a commercial policy. Do you have a premise, one premise or multiple premises? Again, another way to look at is this right for homeowners? ATVs, personal use only, farm use. There's a lot of attachments now for ATVs and UTVs, and that's something to consider. Some on the liability side, business pursuits. What's going on? If you have a flower business, it might have some business pursuit impact. Custom farming, products liability. Additional insured coverages, mortgages, loss payees. Now, some companies don't allow a lot of additional insured endorsements on a homeowners. So that might force you even into the farm owner's realm. Or loss payee for specific equipment. Maybe they don't offer that either. So then you need an inland marine policy to cover that equipment. So those are things to consider. The last one I like to look at is individual. What do I have? You have a farm, and the grandfather owns the land and the buildings. His two sons, they have a DBA and they're operating the farm. And they have, one of them has a son. The son buys a tractor. That's insured. The partnership pays rent to the grandfather, the father here. The son pays no rent and he has no contract with the grandfather. He just uses the land of his father and his uncle. And yes, he may sell some stuff on the side that they don't already grow. Who knows? Maybe they started a hemp operation, then the main farm doesn't want to be a part of it, but they just have some land that he uses. You need other insurance for that kind of exposures. Some companies on homeowners don't allow subchapter S corporations, partnerships, trusts. Trust is getting a little more prevalent, so that's maybe sliding by the wayside, but the other two is pretty consistent. Choice of the homeowners, farm owners. So it's a selection process. And we're going to run through this. This is how it works. So the homeowners, this is where you got coverage: dwelling, personal property, private structures, personal liability. So we got coverage and limits, the perils that are going to be covered. We got an insurance to value with replacement cost. High value risks. I didn't bring this up earlier, but with the side hustle, that's always an issue you might have, because you have people that have a very nice house and maybe they want to do some pick your own. I had a customer that did pick your own potatoes with pitchforks and shovels, and it's a multi-million-dollar home. You know, what's the exposure? Is that something you want to pick up? Burning stoves, e-bikes, ATVs. We got to concern ourselves about that. Business pursuits, custom farming, confinement operations, off premises, products coverages, additional insureds. So this is all part of what is there. So as we look at this, we're gonna move through some slides here, and you know, look at some policy form coverages and get some understanding for where we're going. So we got to look at mortgages and lost payees. Already mentioned that. So the first definition we're going to look at is an excerpt from the O1, which is the main farm form. And we'll look at residence premises. Okay, so it means the applicable insured premise described in a preceding paragraph of the definition of insured premises and shown as resident premises in the declarations. Oh, we've had our first poll. So I put this question in because I feel it's most important in whenever you're reading a policy. All right. And this is a good example because as we look here at residence premises, we can see that the poll, 71%, they read the first page. And to me, I start with the definitions because you can't understand the first or any page thereafter without reading the definitions and knowing what's there. I even print out the definitions in the policy and put them on the side so I can have a quick reference as I'm reading through in the as I read through the coverages. So my call here would be definitions. Exclusions, if you have a lot of different elements that you're concerned about, that may be what the only thing you're looking for because you've worked with the policy a lot, but to me, you got to start with definitions because we really don't know what insured premises is here in this. We don't know what residence premises means as shown in the residence premises in the declarations. Now that's very important. It's got to be shown. You got to write it down. Otherwise, they can't guess. Insured premise. This is from the definition. This is just excerpt. So 1 to 4 family house, row house, townhouse, manufactured home, part of a building that's exclusively used for household, and 1 through D as covered when used solely as a private residence. So that gives you your answer. So we're going to look at a form. The MPL 30 goes in some of the things you have to schedule. Important. If you have multiple locations, you have to schedule them. Otherwise, they're not a premises. Acreage, optional coverage for animal collision if it's wanted. You have to tell them if you have custom farming activity. Incidental business and related activities, contractual liability, motorized vehicle. Now that's an important one you got to read now because again, I told you, e-bikes might fall into this category. It all depends on your interpretation. Trailer coverage, another one, when it's used for business, is there an exclusion or how is it taken care of? This is incidental coverage, make sure it covers your type of exposure. Exclusions. Discharge from aircraft, so no aerial spraying. Farm employees. Again, no coverage. Farm goods, products, and work. This one you need to read, and we're going to examine it in a little bit. Pollution coverage. There's nothing under the farm special liability coverage to cover those items. So if you have an exposure, you may have to go someplace else. Again, leading you over to the farm policy. Just in case you didn't have definitions, here's the definition for custom farming. It's work farming you do for someone else under contract. Farming activities, growing crops, raising livestock. Definition of insured premise, we already talked about. Optional coverages for animal collision. If you got livestock, that's a good one. Another claim I had was when somebody let the heifers out of the gate and it got on a road and there was a collision with a car. So we're back to the special liability coverage. I don't like reading, but there's a little bit here. Incidental business and related activities. Use of the insured farming premise for farming activities. That's not over at your neighbor's property. That's not down at the town hall. That's at your property, your premises. Contractual liability extended to include farms and farming activities. Okay. Insulated motor vehicle, your self-propelled land, farm tractors, or similar mobile equipment. Is that an ATV? Not so sure. Custom farm, coverage is provided. That we already talked. Again, just hitting the highlights here. Discharge from air, do not cover property damage from any aircraft. Farm employees, bodily injury or persons employed by an insured to perform work. Farm goods, products, and work do not cover property damage to products distributed, grown, handled, manufactured, or sold by the insured. Pollution, provide insurance under this policy. We do not, arising directly or indirectly out of discharge, dispersal, escape, and release of pollutants. So you have to know whether this fits your customer. Now we're still on the homeowners. We haven't gotten off homeowners yet. So we're looking at the farm structure schedule is on the MPL 33. So you can list down your structures, policy provisions, causes of loss. Here's your normal causes of loss. Nothing new there. Property not covered. Doesn't cover common provisions. Oh, sorry about that. Doesn't apply to the structure. Here is one of the critical things. Limit of liability. The MPL 33 requires you to list the structures, but that doesn't increase the coverage B coverage under homeowners. You need to increase that to cover the farm buildings on top of all the private structures that may be on that homeowners. So don't get caught here and have an E&O claim. Very important. 80% for full replacement cost. Again, farm owners risk assessment. So now we're going to talk about the farm owners. A little on, what a lot of it maybe look the same, and we're going to move through. Hobby farms, country estates, obviously that's the side hustle kind of thing. These are all normal things that we have. Some of the new things, we have alpacas, hemp, emus, llamas even. So, okay, looks like the poll closed. So a lot of people, it stays the same. Yes, you're right. Coverage B increases? No. None of the above is no. Coverage B stays the same. You need to increase it, as I said earlier. Just reinforcing that item. So on a homeowners, confinement operations, not. Poultry, not. Vacant farms, generally not, unless you have a special endorsement. Horse farms, other than boarding, maybe boarding, but again, generally not. Hemp or cannabis, probably not. So what's covered under the FMO 101? The homeowner section is a lot like the current homeowner's policy that you would have. So we're going to skip that. We're going to look at the farm business section, buildings, machinery, animals, farm liability, all the stuff that you think is going to be there. So again, to do dwelling, you got your basic perils again, household contents, farm buildings. So we got scheduled personal property. This is farm personal property. And you got to know the difference. Personal property on your homeowners versus scheduled farm personal property. This might be important to a bank that it's scheduled. You got a $50,000 machine. They want to make sure there's a loan and it's got a lien on it and they get repaid. So scheduling it and setting up the lost payee is very important. Generally not something that you can do on a homeowner's. But they could also have blanket farm machinery to cover everything else. I know a farm that he scheduled everything because he wanted a $10,000 deductible, and all the little stuff added up around the farm would probably just take about the $10,000 deductible, but he didn't want it to provide the coverage for blanket. So what people are looking for, farm liability. Again, very important, different aspects of farm liability as well. Now here's one, farmers' employers liability. Remember we said there was no coverage for farm employees over on the homeowners? Well, here you got employers liability. This is not workers' comp. This is where the farm policy will pay something for. A lot of states have limitations of payroll or amount of work, hours worked, days a week, full-time, part-time. So this is by state statute. You have to see what's available in your state. Supplemental coverages. So here's one thing MSO does nice. We put it all in one place. So there's a nice chart. Very easy to go over with the customer and show him what he has, what's an extension, and what's on the base policy. So it also works as a good way to create your survey for that risk. So covers the reading on that was a little small. So got newly acquired farm machinery. We have borrowed equipment, newly acquired property, cab glass, pollution cleanup costs. Remember I said no pollution over on the homeowners, but we got it here. Might be one of the key ways that you get over to this. Business property other than farm property on the insured location. So if they have that side business, maybe this would be important to them. They have a little bit of coverage for their business property. Again, blanket or scheduled farm. They got peak season coverage. You know, a lot of farms aren't operating all year long. They have a high season and then they close for a little bit. Limited business pursuits, valuable personal articles is also, that's personalized coverage, but you can see it here on the farm owners. Business office in the dwelling. Now that might not be, seem like something, but that is the residence, your place of business. Is that a business premises? Maybe it wouldn't be, but here you have the coverage that carries over. So we got similar things. We got broad on outbuildings, including the option for collapse, animal, custom farming operations. So we have the definition for farming operations. Activities conducted at a premise controlled by or rented or leased to, I'm sorry, this does not include. Activities for which no compensation or money, no exchange of goods, no neighborly exchange of services. Products liability broader than what we talked about earlier, because even if you felt there was products coverage in the homeowners, it's expanded here. And then recreational vehicles. Is a motor vehicle. Is an e-bike a motor vehicle? Well, I have a hybrid car. Sometimes it's a electric, or there's electric vehicles out there on the road today. So, I'm leaning to, yeah, it's a motor vehicle. It's got a motor. It's got power. So used off public roads while on your premises. Key, you're on your premises. Now we're going to look at some things that are new coming to our policy. We have agritourism operations coverage, liquor liability coverage. Now, why agritourism? Well, everybody's getting into something, and there's that side hustle aspect to things. Festivals on farms, agritourism, petting zoos. There's a number of classes. You got farm tours, winery tours. You got, they have their own baked goods, but they sell other people's baked goods. We got cider pressing, refreshment stands, processed foods. So all really key elements to this, the exposures. Now, a lot of these could possibly, have fallen over onto the commercial package policy in the general liability section. So, there is another place. If this isn't a good fit for your company, it may be in a different place. So, why a commercial policy? One, no homeowners. Corporate ownership. We discussed ownership issues to begin with. It's a little broader on the farm owners because DBAs are all the time. Subchapter S's, yeah, trust, no problem, but some C corporations and other type of entities might not work so well. All right, so what exposure does not fall into a gray area? Livestock, horses, ATVs, 4-H. I say all the above. In 4-H, it all depends on what it's used, what the animal's for. Especially horses, if they're taken off premises. There could be exposures. ATVs, again, if it's used on the farm or off the farm, where it's used on a road or on a premises. Horses, absolutely, not just as a 4-H, whether you have boarding, training, or I just let a friend ride every once in a while. Those are all things that have to be investigated and decided. Livestock, well, what about those eggs being sold on a roadside? That's a new exposure. But now we have chickens. Chickens have a higher exposure rate to fire. So, it's something to watch out for. So some of the key things on the excluded on the farm owners: manufacturing, confinements in a lot of cases, company appetite isn't there for them on a farm owners. They feel they need stronger language. Harvest your own Christmas tree is where you got to bring your own saw and cut down. No power saws, but even still, that may also kick it into out of the farm owners. Other exposures, farm ownership, we mentioned, driving and batting range. I had a sod farm that decided to put an executive golf course in, and they would cut the fairways out they had 12 holes. Every 3 years, they would rotate through the whole 12, and they would cut the sod out, sell it, get extra thing, then replant, and then while that was growing, it was used for the golf course. Weddings, restaurants, festivals, business meetings on your premises on a regular basis, maybe all those could put you out of the farm owners and into commercial. The new agritourism may cover some of these things. constructing a commercial policy. So we got the buildings, and this is all stuff. It's the same stuff that you can do on a farm owners. It's just segmented out a lot better. Again, have a risk survey, property, become an expert. So we're going to show you, you got your general forms and a supplemental declarations. Each section has mobile equipment, you have the form, and you have your declarations. Declarations means that you got to write it down, put it in writing. That's what the contract says. Livestock, supplemental declarations, which is what I showed you earlier. There's one in the in this program as well. You get some extra coverages: earthquake, contributing insurance conditions for farms, value reporting, farm income, mandatory property endorsement. So you're going to conform to the state's requirements. So that's on a property side, but there's also two other sides. You got personal liability coverages for homeowners, which we've talked about. Now you got commercial liability over here. Same things, except you're going to see here, fire legal liability. That's not on a personal policy. So something to be important. And we know another term, completed operations. So you have to understand the coverages. Farm liability form. We got the main form, supplementals. This is all the same as our traditional policy form. Rating types is the same between farm liability and basic liability. So you don't have to worry about different changes. We mentioned all these different items. You need to put them on the policy description and bring about a true contract for your insurance that's going to protect them when something bad happens. And we provide that service, keeping them whole at the time of loss. And I'm going to open it up to questions.
So if you are selling eggs to neighbors and others, would that usually normally preclude a homeowner's policy?
Generally, I would think not, because there's a certain amount of coverage that you can provide on a homeowner's for retail sales. It's really the threshold of the company and their underwriting guidelines then make the decision for you most times in that area, especially with small farms standing at this end of the road with that retail sales. As long as they're produced by you, it's got a different connotation than you bought eggs and now you're trying to mark them up and sell them. More of like a store type operation.
What about agritourism type exposures? What kind of agritourism exposures would be on a standard farm owner's policy?
Well, the agritourism, probably farm stands are covered under farm owners, but it's for your products. It's not products of others. And we know that farm stands don't just sell their own stuff. There's pancake mix, there's jams, there's jellies, there's all these different things. And the company can make a decision to cover that as a farm stand, but there's got to be some kind of agreement regarding that. So the agritourism makes that solid. Pick your own is another thing that's available on a farm owners, as well as boarding of horses is on a farm owners. But it's expanded when it goes to agritourism, because then you have breeding and training possibilities as well.
What about special events?
Agritourism's set up for that because there's, whether it is a wedding where they provide alcohol or not, you can cover it. If you got Kiwanis or American Legion coming to your horse barn to have a night out type of event, fundraiser, you have coverage for that rental.
Does it make a difference if it's a for-profit versus a charity?
No, it's would not make a difference. And if if it was, you know, a different kind of entity or an individual coming to have their wedding at your facility.
What if you're, say, you're boarding horses and also giving riding lessons? Where would you provide coverage for that?
It's usually going to be a very specialized insurance company that's going to cover the riding lessons. Our program isn't set up for riding lessons. We do boarding, breeding, and training is what we have filed. So training is usually without the rider. The person running the facility can ride the horse during training. That's not unusual, but it's not usually with the owner of the horse that's being trained. It's riderless.
Is there anything else you wanted to expand on that you didn't have time to in your presentation? I know you had some other areas that you were going to talk about.
Okay. The only thing I would say is, we need to, uh, dump the bucket. You need to give the information, and if you're an underwriter here, you got to dig through the bucket and find what's truly being done. To have a successful company, to have a successful insured, not everyone is going to be loss free. I think that's why insurance is here, but we have to take the exposures that we want to take.
What's the strangest exposure you ever got asked to write on a farm?
How about cross country skiing in an orchard with a snowmobile track to go along with it?
Were the snowmobiles pulling the skiers or just
Well, the orchard was pretty flat, so it's kind of like a ride through the countryside on your sled, so to speak. Uh, that and the golf course were probably the two most memorable ones. We were able to insure the golf course. We did a specialty policy for that, but uh, the other part of it, it I was not able to provide coverage, which worked out fine because we had a very bad year. We had no snow in New York, and he would have lost his shirt if he would have done what he had. And,
is there an uptick in farms having exotic animals? How is this defined, and what complications might it cause in obtaining farm owners insurance? I'm
I,
seeing a lot of alpacas and llamas and things like that.
can you give me the very beginning of that again? Because
Is there an uptick in farms having exotic animals?
yes, there is. Uh, Limu. You ever hear of Limu the emu? Well, you know, a number of years ago, back in the 80s, that was a big item for the cosmetic industry, and it really hasn't died. But now people are getting some work with the different animals, and has it has an impact, and they want to have them local in their house, around their house. Building lots are getting bigger. Uh, the condensed housing of the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and 80s isn't there any longer. People want an acre or two, and that's all part of it.
What about what about petting zoos?
Yeah, petting zoos are very common in agritourism. It allows them, you have to know how to operate at that, but it really is a good builder with the younger children and young families and gets them coming back to the farm because the kids love to have that exposure.
How about things like wineries and wine tastings?
Okay, so wineries as a business, they really should be on a commercial exposure policy, and it allows them to cover the uh, sale of alcohol more so than a liquor liability endorsement would do. does provide for some of that, but they generally it's going to be a more commercial exposure. One of the issues that we see is one, if you got grapes, a lot of it is starting, you get aerial spraying. Just look at the weather we had this year. A lot of water in the Northeast here, mid-Atlantic states, the South, getting inundated. And that leads to the aircraft necessary to spray the crops so that they don't get the diseases that come with winery and make bad grapes. A lot of mold issues or fungus issues that can just kill a whole season for you. You want to watch out for. They also have a lot of tasting rooms that are larger, a lot of wine sales right on premises, or they may even have an off-premises wine sale at a farm market or in a store in the town. So you see that a lot in California. The wineries get together, they put up a store, and they just sell local wines.
We have a question. When will agritourism forms and new MFO forms be available to use in Delaware?
Well, it's filed in Delaware currently. There's usually a 60-day period for them to review it. It is right now an actuarial review, so we expect it by the end of the summer to have this in effect.
Are there any other questions?
I'm just going to go back to horse boarding for a second.
Sure.
So horse boarding, you really need to have contract liability. That's important because I did have a claim where a person was boarding a horse and they had an agreement called share boarding. You can board your horse for half rent if you muck the stalls in the barn, three of the 7 days a week. I'll put you on a schedule. I got another person that goes 3 days a week, and I'll do 1 day a week, and you two can have low rent. What happens when somebody's in there and gets hurt, gets kicked by a horse? I actually had that situation. So now you have employment. No farm employees on the homeowners. So boarding a horse or just letting somebody keep a horse at your residence, that may be, even if it's without compensation, may be an exposure you want to investigate.
Anything else anyone has? Well, thank you, Rich, for this enlightening presentation. Thank you.